I have a few questions for you. Is there anything that you really, really wanted to chat about today, or should we just dive into my own questions?
Maybe plugging my new project. I have a new exciting project.
Let's hear it.
Me and the boys are doing like a literature review that we're gonna launch like every month, basically, kind of like the mass.
Wow.
Yeah, hopefully that'd be good.
Awesome. Who are you doing it with?
This guy named Matt, and this was a personal trainer, and then Jacob Templar.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna be doing most of it. It's kind of my baby pet project.
Sorry, say that again.
I'm kind of my pet project.
Very nice. Cool, man.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. When do you think it's coming out?
We're gonna try to launch in 2 months, because I still have to do the website, but like the format and everything, the pricing, everything's already done. So yeah.
Cool. Is this part of pragmatic research principles?
Cool. Yeah, it's basically gonna be used to show people that we know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys already do a pretty good job of that, to be honest. So, but it'll be helpful for people, I'm sure. The research reviews are always a good thing. That's how I got into the whole Physio Network thing. Yeah. There's a lot of value in them, I think. So I guess speaking of research, I think a common criticism of people that are very evidence-based is that we might poke holes in a lot of things, like foam rolling or massage therapy or whatever it may be. And then people come to the conclusion that we're really negative and that we're saying that nothing works and nothing matters. So what are your thoughts about that? Like, how would you counter to that argument?
I think it's a common misconception. I think, and I've had a tweet about that recently. It's that there's a difference between effects and mechanisms. So I've usually what I question is how things work, and people assume that because their explanation of how something works is wrong or being questioned, I'm questioning the effectiveness of the intervention. My take, and that might also be considered a bit nihilistic, is that pretty much everything for pain works pretty much the same. The variables that were going to be affected are more like about long-term resilience, fear avoidance, stuff like levels of physical activity. Like we see that people who are afraid of their pain are going to be less active over time, so that can affect their health negatively. Like variables like that. But for pain, honestly, I always like exaggerate and say like if you told someone that I don't know, like tapping their head like this and doing this at the same time was like the best thing for pain, and they believed you, and it was done like in a therapeutical context, the effects on pain would probably be the same as like an ultrasound or even like exercise, in my opinion. I'd say the main variable we're changing with like using an evidence-based approach is the cost effectiveness. Right, because a lot of these, I'd say, I don't want to say outdated, but practices that are being criticized or scrutinized, it's just that you have to go to the clinic to get them, and they take time. They take time away from the clinic. They're not doing much. You're not getting any secondary benefits like ultrasound. Like all you're doing, if you're doing it for pain, it might help a little bit, but it's just not that much. And also, it's just that's the only thing you're doing, and you need someone to do it for you. So, whereas exercise, you can just do it home for free. Right. And you're getting secondary benefits, which you don't get for ultrasound. You're never going to get jacked from ultrasound. So.
No, I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not saying anything works. I'm saying everything works.
For pain specifically.
Yeah.
Right. And if people are coming in and that's their goal to just get their pain reduced, I think what you're saying is that there's other options. Like you could just take a bath at home. You could just exercise at home. Like it's sort of, I haven't been practicing for too long, but I've noticed it's sort of easy to reduce some pain, not like make it go away in an instant, but just to get someone to say, yeah, it's a little bit better. It's kind of easy to do that. And it doesn't last that long always. Right.
Yeah. It's also that people usually seek you when they're at their worst. Like, usually I like to ask people like, why are you seeking help now? Like if you had that pain for a while, usually it's because it's worse. So you're going to get the regression to the mean as well, even for chronic things. Like, oh yeah, I feel much better. It's because you're at your peak and things tend to average out over time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you know of any, I mean, I feel like usually your answer is yes here, but do you know of any research that might track when people actually do go see a physio? Like, is it typically at their worst when it comes to things like chronic pain?
There is, definitely research out there. I couldn't cite it off the top of my head, but I think Seth Peterson cited a paper like this recently where it was like he was looking at whether people went to get a referral for OA or not, like osteoarthritis.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the effects was just people getting better because the peak at passed. So that affects a lot of trials because a lot of like meta-analyses, the problem is that they're going to compare like people who've had pain for years or people who are at their peak versus people like they don't normalize for when the people are coming in for the clinic.
Right.
So that can affect show like, oh, this treatment was very effective, but usually the acute descent in the symptoms is very acute, like it's very steep at the beginning.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's been like 6 weeks that they have pain, the improvements are kind of plateau a little bit, which is normal, right? It's kind of an asymptote, and this would be like painless. It kind of slows down the improvements over time. So I think it's one big flaw in some meta-analyses.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I've never thought of that, about how some will control for regression to the mean. For some people, seeing you at their worst and then just naturally getting better because they'll come back towards that baseline of where they were at before.
They do it okay for acute low back pain. The research on that is pretty good because I think it's one of the areas of research where it's really clear the difference between the acute and the chronic. Right, they tend to separate, but they don't do that for everything. Like a tendinopathy, sometimes it's just started a week ago, and for some people they've had it for years. So like that makes a huge difference.
Right, of course, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, I guess like to sum that up, it's not that nothing works; it's that many things do.
Yeah.
It's just that when it comes to reducing pain, maybe it's not the best use of our healthcare system to just only focusing on reducing someone's pain. Maybe it's more important to improve their own ability to manage that condition. And if they have fear, like you mentioned, to really address that so that they could exercise more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for some people, it doesn't matter because it's like a private environment like mine. So usually what I do is I just explain to them, like, you can get manual therapy, that's fine, but you kind of gauge their expectations with it. And if they're aware that it's just short term and that it's going to make the pain feel a little bit better short term, and that they're already exercising, or if they have absolutely no interest in exercise, I'm not going to be their mom and tell them, you absolutely need to do this. I'm going to be like, hey, it's probably a good idea to do this. If you could exercise at home, like you could probably take care of some of the pain on your own, right? Not need to see me as much. If they're like, either they're already doing that, they don't want to do that, or whatever, I'm okay giving them manual therapy. It's just for me, there's an ethical conflict when they think they need it, or that they think it's like, if they don't get it, they're gonna have pain. But I have some patients, so I rarely have recurrent patients because my goal is to like teach people their own condition. So when I get people, it's just they busted it like it's something new. It's like a fresh injury. They're like, hey, how do I do this? And usually the second time I see them, like second course of treatment, is usually much shorter because they kind of know how it work, and they're like, okay, you've diagnosed it. I can I take care of the plan, and we just do like a concierge approach almost. Whatever. So but I have some patients, like, again, the rare, like very recurrent patients that I have, like the regulars, I guess, it's just people like they know everything I've told them about manual therapy. They're just like, yeah, I don't care, I have the money, I'm covered, like it makes me feel good short term, I'm okay, and I'm 100% cool with that. Cool. It's just not the bulk of my patients, because most people, I think, when they're aware of how manual therapy works, they're kind of disenchanted, and they'll rather just exercise on their own, or be like, hey, you know what, this isn't dangerous, I can just wait it out, or something like that.
All right. So, you mentioned that one form of recurring patients is people that understand what manual therapy is, and they're cool with that. They're cool with just coming in and having you help them with their pain. Do you have other types of recurring patients? Because I know you're not a fan of keeping people in your practice longer than they need to be there. Right. Yeah. So is there any type of other patient that you think it's really important to see them like fairly consistently for an extended period of time?
I think ACLs. They do. Colvinor had a paper on this, I think it was a narrative review that came out last year about this. And it seems there's like another paper that was, I don't remember who did it, but it seems like that 10 visits is the bare minimum. Otherwise, the outcomes are kind of shitty. But you can do it at home. So usually what I do is I space out the visits. I do like minimum 10 visits for ACL repair, sorry. Because I think that's a very bare minimum. If you don't get to the surgery, you can do less because they're good copers. And usually they don't return at the same level of sport. It really depends. Sometimes they go back full 100%, but it's just, the recovery time isn't as bad because there's not as much swelling.
Do you
Yeah,
think
so
that
ACLs definitely.
ACL? Sorry, go ahead.
ACLs definitely. I mean, other clear cases, that just depends on the patient. Like if they need supervision, they're like, hey, I need you, or like I want motivation. So I get a lot of like, I don't know, like obese patients who they have some pain and they want to lose weight. They just feel confident with me because they're afraid of like pain spikes, or they feel judged by other trainers. Then yeah, obese people, I'd say I have a lot of recurrent ones because it's obviously a chronic condition, and you need a lot of motivation to get rid of it or improve it. I know there's just case by case, just people feel like they need a little bit more. Like for things that last really long, like frozen shoulder, I usually do like a very, very, very distant treatment. So I follow them for very long, but I really space out the visits. So I'll try to see them like big maximum of like 5 times, usually 3 times. Just, diagnose, treat them, give them a plan. And yeah, sometimes like rotator cuff related shoulder pain can take like a really long time. There's some cases, like a few cases where it can take up to like 12 months. And these people I'll see like maybe monthly. But again, it just depends on the patient. Usually I try to make most of my patients like not go away, but like get rid of their problems in like 3 to 5 visits. It's just what's going to change is the distance between the visits.
Right.
Right.
Do you think ACL reconstruction is different from a lot of other surgeries? Like, would you say what you said earlier about ACL reconstruction could apply to other post-op conditions?
You mean that if you don't get the surgery, you recover quicker?
No, I mean like you want to see these people more often. Like you said, minimum of 10 times for ACL. And I know you're getting that number from an article, but are there other, post-op conditions? Like let's say someone gets like someone has a ton of patella dislocations, so they get surgery for that. Would you want to see these people more consistently?
Yeah. I think any surgery where you're kind of repairing an instability is going to come with a lot of swelling and just like atrophy. So these people, I think I would like to see a lot of times. I don't know if it's going to be 10 visits, but for sure, like you can put rotator cuff repair in there as well. So things that are going to keep people basically not using that limb for a significant amount of time. Yeah, I would like to see them more. It's just for us, we don't get so many in Canada because a lot of surgeries are covered by the government. Like the rehab is covered by the government. Right. So I'm not sure how it works here in Ontario, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I work at a sports medicine clinic, so the surgeons that work for a clinic also do the ACL reconstruction a lot. So we get a lot of referrals from the surgeon to our clinic.
Okay. Yeah, no, for some reason I don't get that many. I used to a lot because I started with like total knees. That's what I was doing like when I started my career. But now it's like I'll get like the odd like post-op. I love working with post-op people because again, you don't feel guilty for getting them to come back because it takes time. That's just the nature of the beast. I'd say that's a good point. Like if you get surgery and you have a lot of swelling, a lot of atrophy, you are gonna need a lot of physio usually to get the best outcomes possible.
Yeah, I definitely feel that about the post-op patients. They're one of my favorite types of patients to see because it's like there's no bullshit,
Yeah.
All right. Are you trying to get out of here? Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, I have for sure have time. Yeah.
Okay. I think a lot of people would love to hear your opinion on this because you are very knowledgeable because of the absurd and unreasonable amount of research you read. Like I'm just asking you questions and you're citing these authors off the top of your head, and most people can't do that. So I think I've heard you say in the past that you do that because it just really interests you. Now, on the flip side, you do have to be aware of general trends in the literature and where things are at, I think, in order to be a good clinician. So I wanted to know what you think. Like how much should someone read, research in order to be a good clinician? Or are podcasts okay, do you think? Are there other I think we'll sort of know where you're going with this because you're publishing a research review.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think?
I think everyone should kind of dabble in it, like try to read at least like one paper, maybe like a month, and just reflect on it, just to like get an idea of how it works. But once you've vetted a source, I think it's okay to kind of rely on them a little bit. Once you've like double checked a couple times, because you can get you can fall for some people. Some people will cite paper, like I could cite like Brooke Bush, like he cites a lot of papers, but if you read even a little bit of them, you'll see that they're completely irrelevant or they're really bad papers.
Yeah.
But there's people like, I don't know, Greg Lehman. Whenever I was like I'm trying to get him to admit he was wrong once in his goddamn life, but he's always right. So now I kind of trust him, right? I get a lot of the through conversations I have when like he's probably the person that made me change my mind about stuff the most.
Yeah. Greg's never wrong until he proves himself wrong about something.
Exactly. He's the only one who can prove himself wrong. And when you think he's discovered something, he'll repost the thing he did like 5 years ago. And like, great, he was there before. Right. Yeah, so having people like that kind of challenge you on social media is helpful. Like have a group chat, but I think for a lot of people, it's not accessible. Like obviously they don't have a platform like you and I do. It's like I think we got lucky with it growing. That's why. Well, you spoiled it, but I'm starting like a literature review. But one of the things with it was we're also going to have a podcast where we, as a group, we kind of reflect the three authors. We're going to reflect on the studies, and we're going to get the questions that everyone has. But it's also going to be like a place for like frustrated clinicians to kind of discuss. So if you have questions and like mentoring and stuff, like what do I do with this? If we have time, we're also going to do that. But that's like going to be like on a subscription model. We're probably going to expand on it as it grows, but that's one of the goals. Because before I started my page, that's really what I was feeling as a clinician. I don't know if you feel this, but it's just I felt like I was in this little bubble where I was reading evidence, and I was the crazy one.
And you were
and all these people. I was like the crazy one.
Yeah.
For following. It's like, no, you're wrong. It's like, no, like that's what the experts are saying. That's what the literature is saying. That's what the meta-analyses are saying. You're just not reading it, and these big pages were blown up. So it was really frustrating. I felt like I was in an echo chamber. But I think there's a lot of people like us out there. It's just that's the beauty of the internet. You can bring the dog shit, stupid stuff like QAnon together, but you can also bring the people who actually read research and know what's going on together. So kind of like, having this like community, like almost, well, it will be like a book club, like literally. We'll probably eventually like assign readings. We don't know what we're going to do. We just want to make it grow at first. But yeah, I do want to make it feel like just a place where people can come and just like if they have questions or frustrations, they can like vent. So we'll also have like a forum. And yeah, we're going to try to like review like 10 articles per month. Nice. One being like a topic appraisal and the other one's just being important papers that came out recently or that, have been under published. Yeah, I think that's going to be helpful. Yeah, it'll be helpful.
That'll be great. Yeah, and I know like when you talk about these communities of people, following you and like your sort of gang on Instagram, like Jacob, and other people too, like we mentioned Greg and Adam, and a bunch of obvious names might come to mind, like Jared Powell. Following those sorts of people in school helped me graduate being way more confident of a clinician than I would have been without you guys. So I want to thank you for that. And I think like it's great that these sort of communities exist. So one last question. I think people know you as someone who like is very knowledgeable, but they don't know as much about how you practice all the time. So what else do you think goes into being a really good clinician besides having a good grasp of where things are at in the research?
I think I have a lot of flaws as a clinician, but I think one I'm like good or that like a big lesson I've learned is this thing called like harm reduction, which I learned from social work. One of my exes was a social worker, and we had this like big conversation, and it was like blowing my mind. I was like, what if someone has like a heroin problem? Like he's completely high on heroin and he wants to do it again. Like, what are you gonna do? And she was like, well, I'll find some clean needles and make sure he does it somewhere clean because he's going to do it anyways. So I'd rather he not get, like hepatitis or HIV from it. And to me, that was like incomprehensible at the time. But now I really vibe with that because if you look at the data on compliance, it's a lot of patients are not doing the exercise. A lot of patients are lying about doing them. So first of all, like you have to check if they did it, but also it's just taking patients where they're at, like not bombard them with exercise. And I'm also like writing a course right now for a pragmatic rehab principle. Mm-hmm. And one of the core tenets of my course is how do we get patients to comply with exercise? And you might know what the perfect program would be under perfect lab conditions. And that's usually what you see in the literature. But the truth is a lot of people are not going to do it. Right. So you got to take people where they're at. So I think I'm good at that. I've, again, a lot of flaws like every clinician's, but I think that's the one where I'm like, I think most patients do their exercises, and if they don't, they're really honest with me. Yeah. Because I kind of find my way. I find something they like. I right, adapted to exercise. Like the ones I do the best with, I think, are powerlifters, because they love to see someone who's not going to tell them, hey, just stop lifting.
Oh,
I just kind of tweak their training, and it's a very minimal approach, and they seem to really enjoy it. Like I get so many referrals from just powerlifters who are like mind blown because you're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, my opinion, the bare minimum. Yeah, harm reduction.
Yeah, I had a great talk with Angus about how just people always think about optimal when it comes to programming, but we're humans, and like nobody's gonna stick to like having this like perfect like program that was created in a lab and that's optimal for everyone, because it's just we're humans, and that our behavior just won't allow us to like be 100% compliant every single time. So what do you do to help people be more compliant?
Well, first of all, ask them about their previous experience in physio, if they're expecting exercise. Try to keep the exercises at a minimum. What else? Can't spoil it because it's part of my course. But yeah. What else? A lot of things. Yeah, I really try to, first of all, and that sounds stupid, but I really want to make sure that they do it in the clinic. Just make sure like they're going to be able to do it, but also that they have the equipment. That's a big one for me, because a lot of people will not even bother to ask if they have the equipment, like if they have stairs, do like step ups on it. Yeah, so just like little things like that, and you just like you ask them like confidently, like, do you think you're able to do this? And you look them in the eye, and like a lot of people are gonna be like, you know what, maybe we can reduce it a little bit. You're like, okay, you triple check, you quadruple check, and you make sure that you create an environment where they're comfortable telling you if they're not comfortable. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, man. Any other things you want to just add before we sign off here?
Go follow Pragmatic Rehab Principles on Instagram. It's where I post all the educational content I'm doing with Elliot Sierra, an amazing chiropractor, and Jacob Teplar, physio from New York, also a great strength coach. And yeah, we're going to be launching the courses soon, hopefully in a few months. Literature reviews should be up even sooner. So it's going to be launched there. We'll launch on our platforms as well. But yeah, there's a lot of content that's going to be coming here because we've been a bit slow with work and everything.
Sure. Awesome, man. I'm excited to check it out. I definitely will. And also, guys, follow Alexi on Instagram, Nobullshitphysio. You won't be disappointed.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right.